Good afternoon. Welcome to the latest edition of Lunchtime Learning. I'm delighted to be joined today by Holly. Holly is a leadership development trainer, has her own business called Holly Claire. It's most probably as original as Stephen J. Brown Consultancy, but I'm sure Claire must be a middle name or maiden name, or got that totally wrong.
No, you're quite safe. You were right the first time. It's a middle name, so I went for easy. I went for easy. Save all the inspiration and hard work for other parts of the business.
So, how did you become a leadership development trainer then?
Well, I don't think anybody goes through their career pathway at school and says, I want to go into a state agency, then I want to train and develop all the managers. I don't think there's a career path written for that. So I fell into a state agency. My mum was land buyer for Stamford Homes, now part of Galliford Try, went on to be the land director at Annington. And it was a case of if you can't beat them, join them. My weekend job was always wandering around with tape measures or going to get comps from estate agents or manning show homes because nobody turned up. And it went from there, really. I went through, got a little bit involved in regional management, and very quickly realised that management isn't actually about telling people what to do or indeed how to do it. It's about getting the best out of people, getting them to be better estate agents, better negotiators, better line managers. So a huge part of that is still training and development. So that's how it came across. And I've been in training and development probably now the best part of 15, 20 years, an estate agency for over 30. So yes, I am that old.
No, you're not. Don't believe it.
I started
So,
very, very young. Working for
uh,
your mum, you have to start young.
I can't believe she got you out working at 3 years old. Unbelievable, your mum.
Shocking, shocking behaviour. She'll listen to this, I'm sure, and go, "Oh yes, 100%."
So, just starting on the course of agency and working at weekends and working at show homes, what were the lessons that you picked up that actually you've used to your good and help other people over the years?
It was very interesting being a woman in a state agency back then, even though it wasn't actually that long ago. And my mum taught me some good lessons on that. So stand your ground, be professional. That's become the agent of choice has always been a mantra that sat in my head, and I now like to be the trainer of choice, because if people want to do business with you, then it solves so much of the relationship issue. If you've cornered them to do business with you, you've got a reluctant customer straight from the beginning and you're on the back foot. But if they're hungry and they want to work with you, it makes such a huge difference. So when I'd go out and meet people, or people would come into branches, or I'd be learning how to manage people, the big deal is that they wanted to be there. How much more productive are we as human beings if we want to do something? It
It's all
makes a
right.
massive. I heard the whistling in the background.
There's whistling, there's dogs, there's everything.
Your house sounds like mine. I have two large four-legged secretaries. They might come in about quarter of an hour from the dog walkers, so I'm sure they'll be keen to join us.
It's all
So I
right.
think that was the
Mine's
biggest
dinner
thing.
time
Sorry,
soon. Mine's dinner time soon. So yeah.
that's all right then. And I think it makes such a huge difference, the wanting to be there. Look after the people that work for you to the extent that they want to work for you. They're not there because they have to work for you. And it's the same principle with customers. And I think I learned that very early on. Well, before I was an estate agent, I was an air hostess for a couple of years. And when you're hauled up in a tube of steel for 5, 6 hours with your customers, you kind of learn to have to get on with them. So there was
So
some learning there too.
um, I'm sure there was. You talked about becoming an agent of choice, becoming the trainer of choice. Um, what tips would you give to estate agents to become that agent of choice?
I think mindset is absolutely huge. I commute quite a long way to various clients now, so it gives me quite a lot of thinking time in the car. And by the time I walk through the door to that customer, I've got my mindset right. I might have listened to a podcast from somebody that works there. I might have done a little bit of research into a particular management style that I'm going to look into there. But I make sure that I'm on the front foot. And I think behavior breeds behavior. So again, when you arrive and they say, "How are you?" How exciting is it if you say, "I'm really good"? So you're already sharing your enthusiasm. "I'm having a good day." And the impact just that alone has, just your mindset, your determination to be there and set the scene, I think makes a huge. You can never escape first impressions, can you?
100% couldn't agree more. How do agents then get that growth mindset? I mean, there's a fantastic book by Carol Dweck on growth mindset. And there are a lot of agents that are, and it's really interesting. I'm out house hunting, not for myself, but for my girlfriend. And agents' attitude, it's like, we know it all. We don't need to be told anything. I've had one agent that literally we called and they said, "Why are you calling us?" I said, "Well, because we've seen your property on Zoopla and Rightmove." Well, that's where they're only going to go. We're not going to take your details. Just keep on looking on that. The one you inquired about is gone. Didn't take telephone contact, didn't take anything, name, number. And this is for most established agent in this area. And you're thinking, really? And
Yeah.
I don't understand. I'm looking at it now from a public. No wonder estate agents have a really, really bad name. And I know there's some loads of exceptional estate agents out there that do a fantastic jobs for their clients and for community work. But I think I've got a real bee in my bonnet now from everything that I've seen in the last week or so. It is
It,
scary.
it's more than scary. I think there's a lot of estate agents out there that don't actually want to be estate agents, and that goes back to the mindset piece. You've got to, I believe, drop the ego. Sales isn't. It used to be a place for egos. I don't think it is anymore. I think it's turned on its head. I think vulnerability now is the superpower rather than the ego and being able to stand up there and give the big I am. I think the vulnerability side. There are so many salespeople out there that are absolutely terrified of saying, "I got something wrong today." Now, I don't know about you, Stephen, but I dread the day, absolutely dread the day I come home and I say to my partner, "I got nothing wrong today," because that means I've peaked. That's it. That's as good as I'm ever going to get. We're terrified of reflecting back. So take a valuer that comes back in for evaluation that they've lost. Um, and there's either, whether we want to call it a piece of reflection or the real miserable sods out there call it a bit of a post-mortem. Why didn't you get it? Naturally, they'll feel cornered. They'll feel under pressure by their line manager. So what I find fascinating is how the brain works. As soon as you put that estate agent under pressure, they'll go to the flight part of the brain. All the blood will go to the back of the brain, which is the fight or flight bit, and you won't get a straight answer. If you can ask the people that you work with in a good, safe, reflective, vulnerable way, "You didn't get that instruction today. Let's sit down and work out how and why you didn't get the instruction and see what we can do about it." So they might come to you if they're comfortable to do so and go, "Do you know what? I don't think he liked me. I just didn't get it right. I didn't build enough rapport. We just didn't get on at all." Well, then maybe you're not the right person in the office to be dealing with that customer. And if you hear the heavy panting in the background, it is my two four-legged secretaries, nothing else, I assure you. But I think it makes a big, big difference if you're able to be vulnerable. And the same to your customers. So what do we like with fall through calls? You get a fall through in the morning. We don't eat the frog and make the phone call straight away. We put it off because we say we're too busy. Because we've got to admit to somebody that something's gone wrong and we're terrified of doing that. Then it gets to the afternoon and the customer rings up and you're even more on the back foot because you're having to give the customer bad news, and the customer's had to chase you for the bad news. How much going forwards, and having the confidence to put yourself in that vulnerable position, I think grows businesses. I really do.
So why do you think people, or how do you think people can improve on being reflective? And how do you think people can start eating more frogs?
Well, there's aware. How self-aware are you? And most people will tell you that they believe that they are very self-aware. Have you had conversations like this? People, yeah, I know I do that. The self-awareness piece is massively important, but it's not nearly as important as the self-management piece. You can be self-aware, you can get all of that bit right, but if you don't do anything different or choose different behavior, then you're not going to make that difference. You're not going to make that impact. So it's choosing to be vulnerable. Frogs don't come and eat you. They're tiny little green ugly things. You have to make the choice to go and eat the frog. And I have a whiteboard in front of my screen here because I'm really good at having a day. I think you and I spoke after I'd had one of these days where my day turns into a game of whack-a-mole, where I don't actually go forward in any way. I'm literally just sat there playing whack-a-mole all day. What have I achieved? Nothing. I have to choose, right, what jobs am I going to get out of the way? What difficult customers am I going to deal with now, especially while I've got a good mindset on, while my brain's on it? That's the time to speak to the customers that are going to be difficult, not last thing in the day when you put it off for 4 hours. They're cheesed off and you're cheesed off then. That's not going to be good conversations. So I think, you're asking for hints and tips to agents out there. First of all, make sure you're in a position and an environment that you actually want to be in. You've got to want to be there. If you don't want to be there, then you need to look to your line managers, to your environment, to your market, and think, right, what can I influence? What can't I influence? Look at what you can influence. Go out and eat some frogs. And if you've got lots of frogs to eat, just make sure you pick the ugliest, nastiest, fattest one first. So it's your choices within your scope of control and influence. And then be honest. You'll get so much further if you're actually you. COVID has taught us, I think, one massive lesson. Even though communication sped up, we do things like this via e-learning, all those extra bits that have all come into play, and virtual tours and all the tech that's come into play. Even though that's ramped up to quite a high speed level now, what COVID has taught us is even the biggest introverts out there need people, and people need that vulnerability. We need that honesty.
Yes. Yeah. God, there's so much you've covered there that I want to ask you.
Sorry.
I
get excited about it.
No, and I can see your passion still after all those years.
No. The hair dye's good. It covers up all the grey.
So I like the word you said about choice. We all have choices to make.
Yeah.
How we get up on the morning, the right side of a bed, the wrong side of a bed, whatever it is, whether to eat that frog early or never to eat that frog at all, and make it a lot harder. How can people actually improve their self-awareness, their mindset, so that they are waking up the right side of the bed, that they're happy to make those calls?
First of all, you've got to realize that a huge part of it is your choice. So and I often mention this, when you get up in the morning, I always try and remember to make my bed, because then at the end of the day, at least I've achieved something. And there's various books that cover that line. I'll tell you a story, a true story that happened to me this morning, and I reflected on it, and I thought, okay, Holly, it's time you took a bit of your own advice. That's the problem when you get into L&D and development. You're great at supporting and helping others, but you're a bit pants when it comes to eating your own frogs. You're great at helping other people overcome that, but when it comes to you, it becomes a whole lot harder. So I got up this morning, I looked at the weather forecast, and I had some early morning calls to make. So I got on and I ate the frogs, and that was absolutely fine. And I was going at such a pace that I wasn't thinking before I was doing things. And I went out for a run before the winds kicked in. And I live on an Air Force base. So I would normally take my pass and I'd run up on the airfield. That didn't happen today because I took the wrong pass. I took the pass that I had with me from the clients that I've been with, a business I've been working with this week. So it felt pretty silly. It was too stubborn to turn around and come back and get the right pass. Does anybody else get like that? I know I do. Where
Yes.
you make a mistake and you couldn't possibly do the sensible thing and go back and get the right bit because you're in it now. But I thought you've got to just stop and think before you do things. We shoot from the hip. I like Steve Peters' books, the chimp paradox. The chimp side of our head, the emotional side of our head. We make way too many decisions while even the chimp hasn't had a chance to compute it, let alone getting across to the human part of the brain, which might give you a sensible answer. So I didn't look when I grabbed a pass, I just grabbed a pass. If I'd have taken half a second to look, I'd have grabbed the right pass. If you take half a second extra before you answer every phone call to choose your attitude, then you might choose a better one. I've been doing some work and some research with the marginal gains piece, and I know some of you will snore and think how boring. It's been around for years and years. Let's hear something new. Well, neuroscience isn't new. The brain evolves. Some of the basics are all still there. If you can take the really small decisions, like putting the duvet back over the bed, picking up the right pass, smiling before you pick up the phone, making that phone call before you make that phone call. Those little tiny weeny decisions can be half of 1% better. Then you aggregate those marginal gains and you've got that growth mindset. There's no one big magic wand that goes out there that will change everybody's businesses. It's the little tiny pieces that will make the big difference. Adrian Webbs from Polar Bear Pirates taught me years and years ago about TNTs, tiny noticeable things. And that's where the difference is. That's where the growth is. It's in the tiny weeny bits. It's not in the big game changers.
Couldn't agree more. So you've delivered loads of training, loads of great leaders. What does a great leader look like?
I think the great leaders that I've worked with have always shown an element of vulnerability. And even if you look at great leaders out there in the world, I mean, like him or loathe him, take Richard Branson. How many attempts did he have to get the balloon around the world? And it all went horribly wrong. And he said, yeah, we made mistakes, but you know what? We're going to go and we're going to get them right next time. If you look at all the big entrepreneurs out there, they've all got this little bit, yeah, you're right. You know, that didn't work. That was a big mistake we made in our business, and we've learned from it. And what we're going to do differently now is, and they usually say it with a smile on their face, because it's almost like they celebrate the mistakes. Because if you know the mistake you've made, then you have a choice to make it or do it differently next time round. So that vulnerability is always there. And there's always a little twinkle in their eye. I don't know whether you notice that, Stephen, but there's always that little extra drive, that little extra love. They want to be there. Real great leaders, when they walk into my classroom or dial into a webinar, are hungry to learn. They're not just ticking a CPD box. They're hungry to hear different people's views. They're hungry to be reminded of something that they might have learnt 10 years ago, and it worked really well 10 years ago, so they stopped doing it. Then they'll bring it back to the table now. So a hint of vulnerability, a twinkle in their eye, and a bit of excitement. They want to be there. They want to be there. And I'm going to swear now, they've got to give a shit about the people they're leading. They really do. Because if you really care about the people you're leading, they will work so much harder for you. Their productivity will go through the roof because they, in turn, will want to be there.
Okay. How do you build up that culture, that team, for them to be there?
The real small things. Think about the things that have made you smile today and have made you want to be where you are today. So one of the things that's made me smile and makes me want to be where I am today is, yes, okay, I'm at home, but I've got a coffee machine here. Good coffee. Good coffee is one of those little tiny little things. If I'm going to a client that's serving good coffee, I'm even more excited to be there. It's the little tiny things that show you care. Remembering their birthdays. And then productivity, the impact that has is huge. People will ring in sick, not just because they're poorly, but because they don't want to be there. So they're not going to battle through and take an aspirin and deal with whatever's going through to be somewhere they don't want to be. But we've all taken an aspirin to go and do something that we want to go and do. But we don't take an aspirin and do that side for things that we really, in environments we really don't want to be in. So it's not the big game changers, it's the little tiny things. How many leaders out there have bumped a one-to-one with a direct report? So many people will have done that. Well, how does that make the direct report feel? They might not have wanted the one-to-one in the first place, but they'll have psyched themselves up to it, and you bump it last minute, they're going to be a wee bit cheesed off. Their productivity will fall through the floor for hours when they should have been on that one-to-one. You're not getting any work out of them. If you're lucky, they're going through their emails and just doing some filing because they don't feel valued. We're really good as leaders as well at looking after the poor performers, and then we neglect our really good guys. And it's the same in families and friendships. You know, we're all there for the needy ones, but actually the real strength are possibly the quieter ones, the ones that aren't as needy. Well, actually, they do need your support. They do need the right coffee. You know, if they want coconut milk, go and get them coconut milk. It's the little tiny things. The working environment is so important, and that's where you first start with these little tiny things. And as soon as people want to be there, they see your vulnerability, they're motivated to want to work with you. You've got the perfect ingredients for growth because you're all pulling the same direction.
So how do you get the right people in the right seats of the bus?
Same principles. It's the honest and the vulnerability. If you run a psychologically safe environment, then they'll be able to tell you some of the challenges. Getting the right people on the bus. Sometimes accept you've got the wrong people. We've all made the wrong hire. And don't kick them because you made the mistake. They didn't make the mistake. You made the mistake by choosing them. It's not their fault. So don't have a go at them. Move on. The attraction piece, it's funny how behavior breeds behavior, success breeds success. Once word's out there that you buy the right coffee, people will start to want to work for you who aren't working for you. Have a good subs bench. You know how you started a bit of this call, Stephen, by saying you ring up the estate agent and they say, you know, what did you ring me for? No, well, you can get that off the line online. What you ringing to speak to a person for? When people approach you for jobs in that slightly rarer occasion than it used to be, talk to them. Find out what makes them tick. And if they're any good, get them on your subs bench. So when you are in the lurch or you are growing, it's not, oh, crikey, where do I start looking? You've already got 3 or 4 people tied up. You're building a pipeline the same as you would in your offices.
100%. Couldn't agree more.
And
You
there's
have
so much more.
so well, with Jim Collins' book, Good to Great, is exceptional.
It is, and it's up on my bookshelf there. The other one I've read recently is The Speed of Trust, an older one. How we've got too fanatical about too much detail rather than just getting on with things.
And actually, one of the first things you said to me just off before we came on, you talked about keeping stuff simple. Simple
Yes.
is the word. So how, as leaders, can they keep stuff as simple as possible?
Collaborate. Newsflash, you don't all know everything. Collaborate and ask. The simplest solutions are the hardest to find. You ask an engineer, and an engineer will give you an answer to anything, but finding that simple, clean solution is the hardest bit to do. And there's so many different hints and tips that could come into play there. Let's go back to one that we already talked about, the scope of control and influence. Go through what your plans are and think, well, are they actually going to have an influence or make a difference? And you may well find, and we're really good at this again as estate agents, boy, do we like to go through some paperwork. Are all those boxes absolutely necessary? Are they going to make a difference going forwards? And if they're not going to make a difference going forwards, be that keep you out of jail or help drive your business with the customer, get rid of them. If they're there because they've been there since 1980, well, maybe we need to move on from that. We don't like change though as creatures, do we? We don't like letting things go. We like our little routines.
We do. So how do you get people to adapt to change then?
They've got to want to. And I keep going back to this. They've got to want the change. And there's some Simon Sinek stuff, which is it starts with why. And too many employees are too scared to say why and to challenge politely, not challenge as in, hold them by the scruff of the neck, but why are we doing that? And people are far more motivated to change if they agree with the long-term goals. So I'll go back a while to when we were launching tenant protection and the business that I was working with at the time. They said it's all about filling the gap because we're losing some fees. It's all about the commercials. 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 And people didn't want to just work for the commercials. So this is the let's shatter the myth. People don't just work for money. The branches and the areas that said, actually, we need to look after our tenants. They deserve to have the choice of protecting their rent. It's their right. We've got more tenants now than ever before. So why shouldn't they be able to buy an insurance that covers that rent being paid in exactly the same way that I have an insurance to cover my mortgage if I'm not here? Why wouldn't somebody, when they went down the moral compass line and the sales force understood the why, commercials are a big thing, but actually there's a real moral reason here why we need to do it. And it's going to help you keep your job. I'll still be able to pay you if we look after our tenants, because we'll be the agent of choice. They'll know we care about them. We're not just trying to sell them something. We genuinely want them to be able to pay their rent for hundreds of reasons. But one of those reasons is because we care about them. And if you want to do something because you understand the why, then the change curve is still there and you'll still get angry, you'll still deny it, you'll still go through all those standard stages. You just might do the nasty steps a bit quicker.
As a leader, how do you get people to take action and implement it? Because so many people are shelf developers. They go on the training course and they put their notes on the shelf, and that culminates loads of dust. Whereas the ones, you know, they want to learn, they are those self developers, they're happy to take action. But how can you get, I mean, taking action, getting out their comfort zone, just starting, how can you get people to do that as a leader?
On top of the things that we've already talked about today, accountability is really difficult to get right without it sounding like you're forcing them. So I believe in coaching very, very strongly, that if I tell you, Stephen, I'm going to do something, I'm far more likely to do it than if you tell me. So if I tell my partner not to touch the Cadbury's chocolate in the fridge at all, because we're going on holiday soon and we're both trying to be good, don't you dare touch that Cadbury's chocolate, I can absolutely guarantee to you, yes, he's chocolate. If he says to me, I'm going to hide that Cadbury's chocolate, I don't want to eat it for a bit because we're getting ready. I think I lost you for a minute there. Did that make sense?
You did. No, all I got to Cadbury chocolate, and then that was it. And then I went to get my Cadbury chocolate. So
because I told you not to.
You got, yeah, because you told me not to, and it was in my mind. I got to go and get some Cadbury chocolate.
Absolutely. If we're told we can't do something, we want to do it. If we're told we have to do something, we naturally don't want to do it. But if we decide we're going to do something, or if we decide we're not going to do it, then we're far more accountable to ourselves for that. And that's not easy as a leader, to take the time to say, this is the end result we're going for. How are you going to play your part? What do you think we should do differently? Yet we're good at asking leading questions, or we should be good at asking leading questions with customers. We forget we've got to port that skill and use it when we're speaking to our direct reports.
So what are the leading questions that exceptional estate agents should be asking then?
How do you want to do that? So you'll have agreed a way forward. A good leader comes to the table and asks their team how they're going to achieve something, and they collaborate for a solution. A manager or a poor leader would come to the table and say, this is what we're doing and this is how we're going to do it. And you know what? By asking how they're going to do it, you might learn something. You haven't got a monopoly on good ideas.
100%. I remember working at Green & Co. We had a staff suggestion scheme. So every month, everybody had to put in whatever it was. There were you talked about tiny TNTs. There'd be like £5 prizes. Best suggestion of the month or the quarter would win a Red Letter Day prize. And it was really amazing that the suggestions that came out. And I think that came from Asda years ago, from Archie Norman. And I think Julian Richard brought it in at Richer Sounds as well. And I think we are indeed it from Richer Sounds. So yeah, that was great, and that worked well.
Yeah, as much as they should.
Good. So a couple of final questions, because I'm really grateful of your time. So thank you. So who inspires Holly? Hello.
I lost you. I was just about to message you.
Not sure what's going on. Anyway, So thank you. There's a couple final questions if you got the time. Thank you.
Yeah.
So who inspires Holly?
My mum. She has worked very hard against adversity as a woman within the property industry, and she always chose her attitude regardless of what was going on or what grief I'd given her that morning, trying to get me out of the house and get me organised. She still kept going, and still now I'll ring her. She inspires me. I'm a huge bookworm, a huge bookworm. And you mentioned a couple of books where I just scribble down notes. I enjoy sitting and reading and learning. Finding out new little bits of information make a big difference to me. I've got a line I got from Julian Lawide.
Hello.
Hello. As soon as I reach for my phone to message you, you miraculously reappear on the screen.
Amazing. So sorry, there was a line you were saying from a particular book. We didn't catch the line of the book.
Was it the Julian O'Dell bit that future focused, not drama driven?
Okay. Thank
And
you.
it's the
And what
little PhDs that make the big differences to me.
100%. So you talked about a lot about books then. You talked about podcasts. I know you mentioned Chimp Paradox. I know you mentioned, I think, Adrian Webster. We've mentioned Jim Collins. We've mentioned Simon Sinek. We mentioned Growth Mindset. Any others on your all-time? If you had to choose 3, what would they be? It could be books or podcasts.
Steve Peters, The Chimp Paradox. Absolutely 100%. There's one where I think I've got it in my bookcase or it's in my car, which is no, I can't see it off the top of my head. You see, if I'd known you had these questions, I'd have had the books out ready. 3, how can I go down to 3? The Speed of Trust, but that might change next week because I get onto new ones and I get excited about other ones. So yeah, Speed of Trust, The Chimp Paradox, and a third one. How can I just pick one? Blimey. I'm reading a book at the moment called Sapiens. I've been reading it for a long time. I'm finding it quite a hard read, but I'm finding it absolutely fascinating that what is an extravagance today is a luxury tomorrow, and we've got to plan for that. And how many hours we have to be learning every year to keep ourselves ahead of the game, let alone stand still. And how we've got to be ready for the next batch of evolution. Go back to a estate agency when camera? What do you mean have a camera? We're surveyors or solicitors. We don't take pictures. People go and look at houses for that. Can you imagine that now? An email? Blimey, no. I'll put a stamp on it and I'll pop it in those red things we call letterboxes. We don't have email. We have a DX system that occasionally delivers things like our photographs, if we take photographs. You look at how things have changed over the last 20-30 years in our industry, and it's continuing to change and evolve, but humans are still humans.
One final question then. Where does this amazing appetite from learning and self-development come from?
I think being an only child, and because I couldn't ask my brothers or sisters, I'm a massive introvert. As much as I'll go and I'll speak to large audiences, I'll speak to small audiences. I need my space, and you have to figure out a way of evolving within your space, and that's where I have an appetite to learn, a huge appetite to learn. And like I've said during this call, Stephen, the day I get to the end and I go, I did everything perfectly today, I'm going to be pretty damn miserable, because it means that's it. I've peaked. It's game over. I'm always looking for bits that I can move forward with. Not necessarily in terms of conquering the world. I just want to conquer my own world, let alone the bigger picture. Yeah, I find that it excites me. When I learn something new, I get excited.
Brilliant. Well, look, thank you for your time. Thank you for being an amazing guest and sharing so much. Holly, if people want to get hold of you, how do they do that, please?
LinkedIn, I'm Holly Marshall, or I have a website which is hollyclaire.co.uk, and I'd be absolutely delighted to speak to people.
And it's Claire, R-E or I-R-E?
Holly, HOLLYCLAIRE, and I'm Holly Marshall on LinkedIn, MARSHALL. I'm currently working. You'll see I'll come up as CV Library, as I'm doing quite a lot of work for them at the moment.
Fantastic. Well, thank you for your time. Thank you, everybody, for watching and listening. Please like it, share it, and get other people to subscribe and get the message out there. And have a wonderful time whenever you're listening to this. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone, and thank you, Stephen.
My pleasure.